Everyone has heard the familiar advice: if a man doesn't reach out, it means he's not interested. It's a phrase repeated so often that many women accept it as unquestionable truth. Yet the reality is far more complex. A man's silence is rarely a simple absence of interest. It is layered, sometimes deliberate, sometimes unconscious, often misunderstood. And when women misinterpret this silence, it can create unnecessary anxiety, confusion, and self-doubt. After years of listening to countless women ask why he didn't call, why he stopped responding, or why he suddenly disappeared without explanation, I realized the issue was never that women couldn't read the signs. The issue is that they were taught the wrong language to begin with. From the time many of us were young, we were told a story about love. We were told that a man who truly cares will pursue relentlessly, that constant communication is proof of devotion, that absence means rejection. This cultural script has left women vulnerable to panic the moment silence falls, trained to assume that every pause, every gap in messaging is a declaration of lost interest. But silence is not always abandonment. Often, it is a signal, a mirror of what is happening inside him, and an invitation for a woman to look within herself as well, to dismantle this confusion. We must first understand what silence really means. It is not random. It is not meaningless. In many cases, silence functions as a test, whether conscious or not. A man withdraws, pulls back, stops reaching out, and then waits, not always with malice, sometimes simply with curiosity to see what happens next. Does she crumble? Does she chase? Does her mood spiral out of control without his attention? And tragically, many brilliant women, women who excel in every other sphere of life, fall into the trap. They begin sending anxious messages, asking if everything is okay, explaining themselves, or filling the void with desperate attempts to reconnect. In doing so, they unknowingly reveal dependency. The silence worked. The saddest part of this pattern is not that men play these games, but that women lose themselves within them. I have met women who have raised children alone, built thriving businesses, and overcome unimaginable hardships. Yet the moment a man fails to reply to a message, they shrink into a smaller version of themselves. Their power vanishes, replaced by neediness and fear. And whether men realize it consciously or not, the dynamic shifts the moment they sense this dependency. Silence becomes leverage. But Stoicism offers a different path. It teaches that your value is not defined by who calls you, who texts you, or who chooses to show up. Your value is defined by the steadiness with which you remain centered when they don't. True strength lies not in clinging to someone else's attention, but in refusing to lose your peace when that attention disappears. The woman who continues living her life fully when he withdraws, who keeps her energy steady, who does not collapse into insecurity, that is the woman who holds the real power. What happens when she doesn't react to silence when he eventually returns? As they almost always do. He discovers a woman who wasn't waiting. He finds someone immersed in her work, her passions, her connections, her joy. He encounters a life that did not pause in his absence. That difference, subtle but unmistakable, is what shifts the balance entirely. Men can feel it instantly. Of course, not all silence is strategy. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. A man may be fully consumed by his own goals, problems, or personal struggles. He may be dealing with stress, chasing ambition, or wrestling with emotions he doesn't know how to express. Men are often raised to compartmentalize, to handle issues alone, to equate vulnerability with weakness. When overwhelmed, they withdraw, not out of disinterest, but out of conditioning. This can be maddening for a woman who gives generously, who makes time, who invests her energy, only to feel ignored. But when viewed differently, his silence can be a profound invitation while he is in his world. You have the perfect chance to build yours. Ask yourself, when was the last time you were so focused on your own projects that you forgot to check your phone for his messages? When was the last time you woke up excited for something you were doing, not something you hoped he would do? These are uncomfortable questions because they reveal how easily we hand over our emotional balance to someone else. Yet the truth is liberating. You are not born to orbit another person. You are your own universe. His silence is not a verdict on your worth, it is an opportunity to reclaim it. The most dangerous misunderstanding about male silence is believing it always means rejection. Yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes the silence is proof of disinterest, and the sooner you accept that, the sooner you free yourself from wasting energy on someone unwilling to invest in you. But more often, silence reveals something deeper, both about him and about you. His absence exposes your patterns. It shows where you are strong and where you are vulnerable. It shines a light on the parts of yourself that still crave external validation instead of standing firmly in self-worth. Many women, when faced with this quiet void, begin asking the wrong questions. They ask, "What did I do wrong?" They pick apart every interaction, analyze every word, search for clues in his tone or his timing. Yet the more important question is not about him at all. The question is, what does my reaction to this silence reveal about me? Do you spiral into insecurity? Do you feel unworthy, unwanted, unloved, or do you stand steady? Knowing your value is untouched by whether or not someone else remembers to send a message. That difference determines everything. Because here's the truth, every desperate reaction to silence teaches him something. It teaches him that he holds more power over your emotions than he deserves. It teaches him that you are willing to abandon your peace to secure his presence. And once that dynamic is established, it is hard to undo. But when you remain grounded, when you continue creating, building, loving your own life, you show him something else entirely. You show him that you cannot be shaken by absence. You demonstrate independence, self-respect, and inner strength. That energy is magnetic not because it manipulates, but because it radiates wholeness. And yet, compassion is important too. Not every man who grows silent is playing a game or seeking control. Some are silently battling inner wars you cannot see. Anxiety, depression, financial pressures, feelings of inadequacy, these often drive men inward, away from connection. Not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to share. Society has long taught men that silence is strength and that emotions are weakness. In their silence, they may be protecting themselves or even trying, in their flawed way, to protect you. But understanding this does not mean you must tolerate it endlessly. There is a crucial difference between compassion and self-abandonment. You can empathize with his struggles, but you must still decide whether his way of handling emotions is compatible with what you need in a relationship. You are allowed to say, "I understand why you go silent, but I cannot accept that silence as the foundation of our connection." Understanding someone does not obligate you to accept behavior that consistently leaves you feeling unseen, unheard, or unimportant. This is where many women stumble. They confuse empathy with endurance. They believe that if they can just understand him enough, they can love him into better communication. But love cannot replace the inner work he must do for himself. And while you wait, while you excuse, while you explain away the silences, you risk losing sight of yourself. Stoicism teaches that you do not carry what isn't yours. His inability to communicate, his chosen method of coping, those are not your burdens to solve. They are his. Your responsibility is only to yourself to remain grounded, to decide what you can and cannot live with, to protect your own peace. Because silence, while painful, is also clarifying. It tells you things words never will. It reveals his priorities, his emotional maturity, his willingness or unwillingness to invest in a real partnership. A man who disappears without explanation, who cannot be bothered to communicate with honesty, is giving you valuable information. He is showing you who he is before you waste more time convincing yourself of who he might become. And that is not a punishment, it is protection. Sometimes the universe shields us through absence. Sometimes the best answer you can ever receive is no answer at all. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of seeing silence as rejection, you begin to see it as revelation. Instead of asking, "Why isn't he texting me?" you ask, What is this silence teaching me about him, about me, about what I deserve? And when you ask those questions, you stop chasing, you stop justifying, you stop pouring energy into one-sided dynamics. You reclaim what was always yours, your own center. The truth is, silence is a mirror. It reflects not only the man, but the woman staring into it. What you see in that mirror will either disempower you or set you free. If you see emptiness and panic, you know where your work lies. If you see steadiness and strength, you know you are walking in your power. There comes a moment, often after enough painful silences, when a woman realizes something vital. She cannot control what another person does, but she can control what she does in response. This realization is the turning point. It is where anxiety begins to dissolve into clarity, because while his silence may be unpredictable, your response doesn't have to be. You can choose how much space it takes up in your mind, in your emotions, in your daily life. Too often, women fall into the cycle of waiting. They pause their joy, their goals, their progress, hoping for the message that will validate their worth. Days stretch into nights, productivity disappears, and emotional energy drains into an endless loop of, why hasn't he reached out? But what if, instead of waiting for his return, you use that silence to return to yourself? Think about it. Silence is empty space, and empty space is potential. You could fill it with worry, with overthinking, with checking your phone every 5 minutes, or you could fill it with growth. You could write, create, build, connect, move your body, learn something new, or rediscover passions you had put aside. Every hour you spend waiting for him is an hour lost from your own life. But every hour you invest in yourself during his absence strengthens the foundation that no one else can shake. And here is what makes this transformation so powerful when he does return. As most men eventually do, he finds a woman who didn't stand still. He comes back to discover someone with stories to tell, projects underway, and a life that kept expanding without him. That energy cannot be faked. It radiates from within, and he feels it instantly. You are no longer the woman who needs him to feel whole. You are the woman who chooses whether or not he is worthy of entering the world you've built. The irony is that when a woman truly embodies this independence, she rarely has to endure long silences again. Men are drawn to her energy because it is rooted in self-sufficiency, not desperation. They sense, consciously or not, that she will not crumble in their absence, and that difference changes everything. Instead of chasing, she attracts instead of proving. She allows others to prove themselves to her instead of asking, "Am I enough?" She moves with the knowledge that she always was. But let us be clear, this isn't about playing games. It is not about pretending you don't care when you do. It is not about using silence as a weapon to manipulate him into chasing you. That is still dependency. Only inverted. Real power doesn't come from trying to control others. It comes from mastering yourself. It comes from caring more about your peace than about his attention, more about your growth than about his approval. It comes from building a life so rich and full that his absence cannot impoverish it. This doesn't mean closing your heart or rejecting love. In fact, it means the opposite. It means loving from a place of wholeness rather than lack. When you know you are complete on your own, you can love more freely. Because you are no longer trying to extract validation from someone else. You offer connection, not because you need it to survive, but because you have so much within yourself to give. And that kind of love is far more powerful, far more lasting, far more magnetic. Of course, reaching this place isn't easy. It requires deep inner work. It requires facing insecurities and fears you may have carried since childhood. It requires unlearning the stories you were told about what love should look like. It requires learning to sit in the discomfort of silence without filling it with panic. But each time you succeed, each time you choose to stay centered instead of chasing, you strengthen a muscle inside you. You're training yourself to stand firm, no matter what storms come. And slowly, the silence stops being frightening. It stops being proof of rejection. It becomes information. It becomes space. It becomes opportunity. It becomes the mirror that reflects your own growth back at you. And the more you build, the more you create, the more you return to yourself, the less power that silence will ever hold. There is a painful truth many resist, but accepting it can set you free. Sometimes silence is not temporary. Sometimes it is not a tactic, a distraction, or a phase of inner struggle. Sometimes it is simply disinterest, and as harsh as that may sound, it is far better to face this reality than to live in illusions that drain your energy for months or years. A man who withholds communication, who cannot be consistent in his presence, who vanishes without explanation, is showing you everything you need to know about his capacity to be a partner. He may not say the words aloud, but his silence speaks clearly. Yet here's the paradox: when women stop fearing this truth, they stop suffering from it. Because silence only has the power to wound when you interpret it as a reflection of your worth. But when you recognize it instead as valuable information, it becomes clarity. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong?" you begin asking, "What is this telling me about him?" And the moment you ask that question, you reclaim your power. His silence is no longer a rejection, it is a revelation. This perspective reveals another critical truth: attachment is the real enemy, not loss. So many women suffer for years not because of what a man did, but because of what they believed could have been. They cling to the potential, to the idea of what he might become. Instead of acknowledging what he is showing them in the present, they replay the sweet moments, the promises, the hopes they invested, and they attach themselves to a version of him that may never exist. That attachment is what prolongs the suffering. But the woman who frees herself quickly is the one who sees clearly if he leaves, if he withdraws, if he shows disinterest. Then space has been created for something better to arrive. And make no mistake, sometimes silence is a gift. It is the universe protecting you from wasting more of yourself on someone who cannot or will not value you. A man who disappears without explanation, who refuses to communicate, who lacks the maturity to handle emotions, is doing you an incredible favor. He is revealing his character before you invest more. He is showing you that he may not be capable of offering the love, respect, and consistency you deserve. And when you learn to see it this way, silence transforms from a wound into a warning. It stops being something that breaks you, and it becomes something that guides you. But here's where another challenge appears. Many men were never taught how to express themselves effectively. They may not even realize that their silence is hurting you. They may believe withdrawal is the only way they can process stress, confusion, or insecurity. They may not know how to articulate what they feel, because society taught them to equate vulnerability with weakness. And so they retreat, they compartmentalize, they go quiet. This silence is not necessarily a lack of love, it is a lack of skill. Yet, even here, the responsibility does not fall on you to fix it. You can understand it without accepting it. You can empathize with his struggles without allowing them to destroy your peace. This is where boundaries come in. You must decide what you are willing to live with and what you cannot. You can say, "I understand that you need space when you are stressed, but I also need communication to feel secure in a relationship." And if he cannot meet that, you are free to walk away without guilt. Because your responsibility is not to carry his burdens or to teach him emotional maturity. Your responsibility is to protect your own well-being. Silence, then, becomes a teacher. It teaches you where your boundaries are. It teaches you whether a man has the capacity to meet your needs. It teaches you whether you are ready to hold your power, or whether you are still tempted to give it away. And if you are willing to see it this way, silence is no longer the enemy. It is the training ground. Each time you face it with steadiness instead of panic, you grow stronger. Each time you choose your peace over your need for his attention, you become freer. Each time you stop chasing and start creating, you step further into your own power. Silence is one of the most uncomfortable experiences in love, Not because of the absence of words, but because of the stories we create in its emptiness, left unchecked. Silence becomes a canvas for fear, insecurity, and doubt. But when approached differently, it becomes something else entirely, a mirror that reflects who you are without external validation. That is where the essential question emerges, the question that defines everything. Who are you when he doesn't respond? It is not an easy question to answer. Many women, when faced with silence, begin to unravel. They feel anxious, empty, unworthy. They start to lose sight of their own value and shift into desperate patterns of chasing, explaining, or justifying. But others, those who have done the inner work, stand firm. They remain centered. They understand that their worth is not diminished by the absence of attention. They know that their value exists independently of whether someone chooses to acknowledge it. This is the difference between the woman who crumbles in silence and the woman who blooms in solitude. And here lies the secret most rarely spoken. The women who master themselves in silence become unforgettable. Not because they play games or manipulate, but because they embody something irreplaceable, authentic self-possession. They are women who cannot be controlled by absence, who do not beg for crumbs of attention, who live from a place of fullness rather than lack. Men can feel this energy instantly. They sense it in the way she carries herself, in the steadiness of her spirit, in the richness of her life beyond the relationship. And that energy draws people in not out of desperation, but out of admiration. Of course, arriving at this place takes time. It requires courage to face your own insecurities and to see where you have handed away power in the past. It requires effort to stop checking your phone obsessively, to stop analyzing every silence, to stop waiting for someone else to validate you. It requires commitment to building a life so full that no absence can empty it. But the reward is transformation, not only in your relationships, but in every aspect of your existence. Because the truth is, the power you build in silence extends far beyond romance. The same strength that allows you to remain steady when a man withdraws is the same strength that empowers you to negotiate confidently at work, to set boundaries with family, to choose friendships that nourish instead of drain. The same self-possession that stops you from chasing someone who doesn't value you is the same self-possession that helps you walk boldly toward your goals. Silence becomes training, not torment. And what happens when you truly embody this? Something remarkable. You stop tolerating what you once excused. You stop settling for men who give you fragments of attention. You stop making yourself small in order to keep someone who doesn't even deserve your energy. You begin to live from a higher standard, and in doing so, you attract people who meet that standard. You no longer beg to be chosen, you choose. That is the real transformation. It is not simply about surviving a man's silence. It is about using it to become a woman so complete, so authentic, so grounded, that no silence can shake her. She loves, not because she needs love to survive, but because she has so much love within herself to give. She chooses, not because she is desperate to be chosen, but because she understands her worth and will not settle for less. She radiates, not from trying to attract, but from simply being whole. And here is the liberating truth you must carry with you. Silence is not the end. It is a beginning. It is a chance to return to yourself, to reclaim your power, to remember who you are without anyone else's approval. The woman who stands firm in silence becomes unstoppable, not just in love, but in life. She no longer fears absence because she has discovered presence within herself. And that presence is impossible to replace. So the next time he doesn't reach out, pause before the panic rises. Breathe. Ask yourself not what you need from him, but what you need from you. Then give yourself that gift. Build your world. Pursue your goals. Nurture your passions, because the woman who learns to be her own source of peace, love, and validation is the woman who cannot be broken by anyone else's silence. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to reflect deeply, to share your story in the comments so others can draw strength from your journey, and to remember that your power has always been in your hands. if you found value here. Give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more reflections like this. Your story, your growth, and your voice matter more than you know.